Zach Wilson from BYU. Chris Sims has him as the top quarterback prospect, to the surprise and not delight of many who are convinced Trevor Lawrence is the top guy. You spoke recently with Wilson. He talked about another former BYU quarterback, Steve Young. Here's Zach Wilson.
You think with Steve Young how everything was so smooth in his career when it's not. And I think that's what's interesting about mine as well is I wasn't a big recruit. I didn't have a lot of offers. I went to BYU as just a normal 3-star recruit, nothing special, and nobody expected me to play early. And, I ended up having a chance to play as a freshman, something that I had to work for, but there was 9 quarterbacks in the quarterback room at the time. And then, even now I was nobody last year, and I was fighting for my starting job back after my sophomore year of having shoulder surgery and things. Things didn't go as well as we wanted to, and the coaches opened up a competition to try and earn the starting spot back. And so I was so determined to try and, win that job back and prove that it was mine.
You compared him last hour to Joe Burrow in that what a difference a year makes and what a difference that extra year made for Zach Wilson. Played a lot of games last year, unlike plenty of college programs. The competition level wasn't at the same level we saw from a Trevor Lawrence, and Sims and I talked about that earlier in the week, and there's different ways you can look at it, but that's the reality, and that's part of the projection that teams are going to have to make this year. Can Wilson perform the way he did against a lesser level of college defense than what he's going to see in the NFL? Didn't hurt Patrick Mahomes. He was able to step up, and Wilson could too. That's just part of the challenge of scouting. But, I agree with a lot of what Sims says about the guy. I mean, when you watch his highlights, he does just jump off the screen, and he can do a lot of the things that we've gotten used to seeing from a guy like Patrick Mahomes in recent years.
Mike, I think there's a couple of things about Zach Wilson that people probably should know. One is that, a year ago at this time, as we talked about briefly in the first hour, that he was not only was he not guaranteed the starting job this year or anything. He was in a 3-man competition for the starting job a year ago as COVID began to wreak havoc on the off seasons of college football teams. So what he did is he took the first 7 weeks of everybody's exile, from organized programs, and went to Southern California and trained with his quarterback tutor, John Beck. While staying enrolled at BYU because there were no, in-person workouts or whatever. And then in the spring and summer, after everybody started to go back and things were calming down a bit, he ended up driving 10 hours each way on 6 or 7 weekends between May and late July to work more with Beck. This guy is really driven to be a really good player. And I think the second thing is, if you look at the ball he throws, okay, so he's like 6'2 and a half, 210. He's not a big guy, and he is going to have to get thicker, as Chris Sims says. But if you look at some of the throws he made last year, John Beck would always teach him, and he would use this cliche. He said, you don't want to throw the ball to your receiver. You want to be able to throw the ball through your receiver. And if you look at the toughest game he played all year, Coastal Carolina, at Coastal Carolina, and people will laugh at that, but Coastal Carolina was really good last year. They were a legitimate team last year. He made some throws in that game that any quarterback in the NFL would love to have as much arm as he had in that game. So, look, Chris really stepped out on a limb in saying he's better than Trevor Lawrence right now. But I can tell you, Mike, I've talked to 2 coaches in the NFL who are who do not laugh at Chris Sims, I can tell you that, who really, really like Zach Wilson. And that's why I think there could be a second part of this draft, okay? I just don't think there's any way that Jacksonville does not take Trevor Lawrence. I don't see it. But I do think that creates almost a second first overall pick, because I do think that everybody is just going to say, okay, Lawrence is gone. Now who's getting Zach Wilson? And my feeling is that is where we might see Carolina at number 8, Denver at number 9. Maybe. And again, we'll see. There's, 55 days before the draft. We have to wait and see. But to me, I think we might have sort of a second, first overall pick. And so many people trying to go get that second pick with Joe Douglas of the New York Jets.
I still am fascinated, though, by the possibility as Zach Wilson gets more and more buzz. And I love a story of a guy who became determined to get the absolute most out of his abilities. And how many times do we see that being the common denominator for a high level of success in football? A guy who just decided, I'm going to put everything I have into this and get the absolute most out of what I can do. But at some point, does Trent Baalke, the GM of the Jaguars, say, hey, Urban, Coach Meyer, come over here. Take a look at some of these plays that I've. A lot of people really like this. Are we sure? And you're not doing the job right if you don't constantly ask yourself. You have to constantly ask yourself, are you sure? Are you sure? And all it takes is one time to say, maybe we're not sure.
Well, Mike, in that, to that point, I'll tell you two things. Brian Schottenheimer, the offensive coordinator of the Jaguars, called John Beck recently and had an extended conversation with Beck about Zach Wilson. Was very bullish on, in fact, that Coastal Carolina tape that I talked about a minute ago. And here's the other interesting thing. Teams get to spend no more than 5 Zoom sessions with any prospect. The Jacksonville Jaguars have already had 2 Zoom sessions with Zach Wilson. Now, I don't want that to, I don't want you to say, whoa, what does that mean? Because they've also had 2 with Justin Fields. And they've had, I'm sure, at least that many with Trevor Lawrence. I still think, Mike, it's highly, highly doubtful that they don't pick Trevor Lawrence.
But as the star of Zach Wilson rises, and Urban Meyer's still getting used to the reality that there is someone over him. He found that out the hard way 3 weeks ago with the Chris Doyle misadventures. But when you got the guy with the handlebar mustache who can come in anytime he wants and start asking questions, and you can't just tell him, please leave, because he runs the show and owns the team, you want to be sure you've done all your homework and you can make a good case as to why you did what you did in the event that for some reason Trevor Lawrence doesn't work out and Zach Wilson becomes a superstar. And chances are both are going to work out. That's the thing about, as you said earlier, quarterbacks so much more prepared for life in the NFL than they used to be. But it has to at least give the Jaguars something to seriously think about. And if nothing else, it makes them more resolved that Lawrence is their guy. But, that's what teams do this time of year. They constantly think and rethink and rethink and rethink. And there's a lot of CYA that goes on before you make that pick.
There is, Mike. And look, the fact is there's a very good chance Trevor Lawrence is going to have a great NFL career. And I think there's a very good chance that Zach Wilson could have one too. And so I think you just have to look at all of your situation all around. And Trevor Lawrence does have one thing that Zach Wilson doesn't, and that is a lot of big game experience. Zach Wilson doesn't have that. He played some big games in his first 2 years at Brigham Young, but he didn't play anywhere near the schedule of Trevor Lawrence. And what did Trevor Lawrence go? 34-2 in his college football career. So, to me, I don't think, and look, I have tremendous respect for Chris Sims because he's been right so often about quarterbacks in the last few years. But that's not to say that Trevor Lawrence isn't going to be really good in the NFL, because his track record is certainly far and away the best of anybody entering the draft this year at quarterback.
And Sims fully acknowledges that. I mean, I think in Sims' mind, both guys are going to be great. He just believes that Wilson has a skill set that has comparisons at the highest of levels in the current NFL and maybe in NFL history when you talk about an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights From NBC Sports.